Welcome to The Explainer. So, today, we are diving into something completely radical. I mean, whether you're stressed about the economy, dealing with a bit of climate anxiety, or just curious about, bold new ways to look at human civilization, this one is going to give you a lot to chew on. We're unpacking a 2023 manifesto by an author named Sjoerd Seffing. It's called The Best Way Forward for Mankind, Changing the Traditional Production and Life Mode. And we're going to look right at his intense critique of modern society, along with the completely unconventional solutions he puts on the table. Let's get right into it.
Right off the bat, the text hits us with this massive question. Can science actually save us, or do we need a total ground-up overhaul of how we live? Seffing points out a pretty stark reality. We've got over 7 billion people on Earth right now just churning through resources every single day. And you might think, well, what about green energy, new tech? Well, according to the author, while those scientific leaps are great for finding new energy sources, ultimately, they're just a drop in the bucket. The core argument he's making here is that technology alone simply cannot fix the existential crisis we're staring down.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. The text lays down this foundational truth, or what the author sees as an absolute truth. Consumption has completely exceeded the regeneration capacity of the Earth. He argues that our traditional mode of production, literally the way we've structured human life and work for centuries, is fatally flawed. We're basically living on a massive planetary overdraft. And he insists, this isn't something we can just tweak or legislate our way out of with our current methods. The premise here is that the very foundation of human existence has to be entirely rethought if humanity is going to survive.
To explain exactly why we need this massive overhaul, Seffing gives us a rigorous diagnosis of the modern world. He categorizes our society's fundamental flaws into what he calls the 8 chronic diseases of traditional society. And that word chronic is super intentional. He's saying these aren't passing phases or temporary glitches. They are incurable symptoms baked right into the DNA of our current lifestyle. Let's quickly run through what these 8 diseases actually are.
The first 4 really paint a picture of total systemic failure. First, like we just said, resource consumption outpaces regeneration. Under our current setup, total resource depletion isn't just possible, it's an inevitable reality. Second is extravagant resource waste. The author notes that a huge chunk of what we use for food, housing, and transport is just unnecessary extravagance. And honestly, he claims no amount of moral teaching or new laws can fix that. Third, we've got official corruption and slothful government. He literally calls traditional life the fertile soil for corruption. As long as we live this way, corruption's going to thrive. And fourth, ethnic and national conflicts. Driven by the fight for resources and clashing ideologies, he argues these inevitably lead to inescapable wars and massive military spending.
Moving right along, diseases 5, 6, and 7 focus heavily on our social and economic fabric. Disease 5 is the gap between the rich and the poor. Now, he admits some gap makes sense because of different talents and work ethics, but when it gets this massive, it just breeds severe social conflict. Disease 6 is what he calls the magic of money. When chasing money becomes our primary reason for surviving, it just creates endless personal pain and social turmoil. And then disease 7 is the loss of integrity. This is where he connects the dots. As resources shrink, competition spikes, and human integrity just plummets. That loss of trust infinitely drives up the cost of interacting with each other, eventually destroying social stability altogether. And all of that brilliantly illustrates the final disease, number 8, the total failure of our current economic systems. On one side, you have government planning. The author compares this to a collapsing pillar, trying to prop up one thing while inevitably crushing another, which just leads to public impoverishment. But then on the other side, the market economy is literally just the law of the jungle. It's like a tiger stalking a rabbit. The weak are merely prey for the strong. The text makes a really firm conclusion here. Neither of these systems can ever create an ideal human life. Basically, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. So, having diagnosed all 8 of these terminal societal diseases, the manifesto makes a massive pivot. It goes from this sweeping, urgent critique to proposing a genuinely radical solution. The text sums it up with this quote: "The best plan is to replace the traditional way of production and life with the new way." Notice he isn't saying we need better tax laws or a new peace treaty. He's proposing a total, ground-up replacement of how human beings exist on this planet. So naturally, the question is, what exactly is this new way? Well, that brings us to the absolute core of the author's vision. He defines this new human mode as the second home. It's described as a brand new mode of production and life created by a concept called Life Shanyuan. And what's really wild here is where he says this idea comes from. He states it's a full replication and copy of the production and life mode of the thousand-year world of the kingdom of heaven. So the author is basically claiming to have decoded a perfect heavenly model of existence and translated it into an actionable blueprint to replace our broken earthly society.
So what does this second home actually look like if you put it into practice? Well, buckle up, because the tenets he proposes are shocking. Under this new model, human beings will no longer enter into the institutions of marriage or family. Let that sink in for a second. On top of that, sovereign countries? Completely gone, replaced by absolute global cooperation and resource sharing. He also calls for strict population control to keep growth permanently below the Earth's regeneration limit and something called a designed global human flow, meaning the movement of people around the globe is fully planned and managed rather than organic. The sheer scale of this proposed global overhaul is just staggering.
Now you're probably looking at all that and thinking, okay, this is just pure theoretical science fiction. But Shufang makes a really striking claim here. He insists this is not a dream. Instead, he presents it as a summary of a successful experience that has actually been practiced here on Earth for 15 years. So the manifesto isn't pitching this as a hypothetical wish list. It's framing it as a proven, beta-tested model that is totally ready to be scaled up to replace traditional human society globally. Ultimately, all these massive sacrifices and changes, giving up families, dissolving nations, accepting strict global controls, they're all driving toward one specific utopian promise. And that is allowing everyone to reach the state of life where, quote, everyone owns nothing, yet owns everything. It's a vision that completely wipes out our traditional concept of individual ownership and personal boundaries. In its place, the author envisions this fully collective, unified existence that he truly believes will permanently cure those 8 chronic diseases we talked about earlier.
Which leaves us with an incredibly provocative question to ponder as we wrap up today's explainer. According to Shufang's manifesto, solving corruption, war, and environmental collapse requires the complete dissolution of the family unit and the sovereign nation. So, is the ultimate cost of true global harmony the complete loss of our traditional individuality? It is a heavy, radical thought. And whether you find this vision inspiring or deeply unsettling, it undeniably forces us to critically examine the everyday systems we completely take for granted. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this text today. Keep thinking critically, and I will see you in the next explainer.